This is April Federico with Brownies for Breakfast. If you are listening to this on Spotify, this is Start Your Week with a Treat. If you are watching this on YouTube, this is End Your Week with a Treat. So I am here with Suzy Wood, and she is a integrative nutrition health coach and owner of True Wellness Within. So welcome, Suzy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you do as an integrative nutrition health coach.
Yeah. So, integrative nutrition is all about looking at lifestyle factors as well as food factors, your food choices to live a healthy life. Because we can't just look at food alone, right? We could eat all the kale salad and chia seeds in the world. That does not mean that we're going to be healthy. So, as an integrative nutrition health coach, I work with my clients to look at their lifestyle factors to see what's out of balance and work on that because those out of balance factors end up leading to stress, and that stress can lead to a whole host of health problems. So, we address it from a nutritional point of view as well as lifestyle factors.
Sure. Can you talk a little
Mhm.
bit about the lifestyle factors that contribute to living a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, sure. So, there's basically 12 areas in our lives that we look to make sure they're in balance. And they are things like your physical activity, your career and finances, level of home cooking. Um, uh, what else is there? Your spirituality, your relationships, those are key, your level of education, social life, your overall joy. So, all of these areas sort of fit together like a puzzle. So, you can imagine if something's out of balance, like let's say you're not very happy in your job.
Hmm.
So, come, Sunday night, you might be sitting there 8 o'clock at night, thinking, okay, I'm really not happy about the work week that's coming up ahead. This might not really even be conscious, right? Maybe you just kind of walk over to the freezer, grab that Ben and Jerry's pint of ice cream because
Right.
you're just sort of trying to get, make yourself feel a little bit better because you're nervous about the week ahead. And before you know it, you've just downed, 500 calories of ice cream, right? Or potato chips or whatever your go-to thing is. So, when we're stressed and worried about certain areas in our lives, we end up making poor food choices. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you would go out and quit your job, but maybe there are things that you can do, speaking to your boss about working on different projects. Maybe there's a team member that you're not working well with that you need to, work on something. So a lot of it is building up the confidence and courage to figure out what's not working and what can be tweaked so that you can make it a better situation. So a similar thing could happen with finances or with relationships. Many of my clients, I have another specialty where I work with divorced women and working on trying to help them get their lives back in control after they've been through a very stressful event like divorce or separation. And so, same thing when relationships aren't going well, you're in a toxic relationship or a hurtful relationship. That can lead to a whole host of stressors in our lives. And I am divorced. And when I was going through my divorce, I ended up getting horrible back pain, really, really debilitating back pain. It's just that's where all the stress went for me, and to the point where I was not able to sleep at night. I could barely even take a deep breath in without this like pain wrapping around my whole side.
Right.
And it was just so awful. So of course I, had the back pain, which was really uncomfortable. I was not sleeping. I'd wake up, if I did manage to get an hour or two of sleep, I was completely groggy. I was in an awful mood. I wasn't a very good parent at the time, super stressed out. And and then I ended up going to the doctor because I was like, I can't live like this. Like, what can I do? So she gave me a muscle relaxer and I took it. I've never taken anything like that before.
Mhm.
And the next day I ended up getting into a car accident. This is
Oh
just way
no.
too strong. Like just the stress of going through the divorce literally led me to having a car accident. I mean, everybody ended up being fine, but it was a horrific experience to go through. My insurance went up,
Of
right? So
course.
it's just so stresses in our lives can lead to really significant problems, and can even lead to anxiety, depression, overeating, undereating, a whole host of chronic illnesses, hormone imbalances. So, it's really important to identify what's stressing us and what we can do to fix those. So that's why I work with my clients to figure out what their stressors are. Because again, it's not just food that makes you healthy. We have to look at what's going on in your life that
Yeah.
might be causing these stresses.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing insight. And I've been
Mhm.
learning a lot about stress recently. And
Mhm.
because for those of you listening or watching, I freelance copyright on the side of my business. So yeah, one of the clients who I'm working with right now is a doctor. So she actually teaches her clients a lot about well, she really gets into the roots of what's causing her clients stress, or
Uh-huh.
patients, I should say. And she just did a whole podcast episode about cortisol, melatonin,
Mm,
and all that fun stuff that occurs in the
exactly.
body, all those hormones. So yeah, so
Yes.
how do you think since my area of expertise is diabetes,
Mhm.
how do you think cortisol relates to diabetes? I know it's kind
Yeah.
of
Well,
but
yeah. I mean, it's all hormone. This is what I was just mentioned, and what the doctor that you're working with mentioned. These are hormone imbalances. We think hormones, and we just think, estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, things like that,
yeah,
like the sex hormones. But there are so many more. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So when your body is under stress, like when your insulin levels are out of whack,
yeah,
then that can change and how your body reacts to melatonin and the production that it makes. It can also change. There's other hormones called leptin and ghrelin, and leptin is that signals your body, your brain, that you're full. And if that's out of whack, well, then your body's like, oh no, I'm still hungry. I'm going to keep eating, and then you end up overeating, right? And then ghrelin is like the hunger hormone, like your body says you're hungry, so you start eating. And if those are misaligned and out of balance because of cortisol levels being, out of whack, it's just snowballs, right? So cortisol
yeah.
gets out of whack, melatonin gets out of whack, your hunger hormones and your satiety hormones
Mhm.
are all affected. So it's all connected. And a diagnosis like diabetes, obviously it's stressful, just understanding the diagnosis, dealing with the
Mhm.
diagnosis. And then it's a lifetime commitment to maintaining those insulin levels. So and it's stressful, and it's something that you have to think about all the time. You can't just be like, nah, today I'm not going to think about my diabetes. It just doesn't
Yeah,
work that way. Right. I know from family members who have diabetes, it's just, you're always thinking about it.
right. And you
Yeah.
mentioned to me personally that your father has type 2 diabetes. So I'm
Mm.
curious to how he manages it.
Yeah. I mean, he's now 81. He just had a birthday. Um,
Oh, happy
so
birthday to
he,
him.
yeah, thank you. I mean, he's been doing really well. He's very diligent about what he eats. And he is very on top of his taking his insulin,
Hmm.
to the point where his levels, his A1C levels, it's really almost like he doesn't have diabetes. He's able to manage it that well. He actually measures out all of the medications himself. He doesn't do the pre-filled syringes because he wants to have like a very specific um, medication that is working for what he's eating at that particular time. So he doesn't like to work in sort of averages. But he says that it's really challenging, like when he goes out to eat, because you order your food, you have to take your insulin, within a certain amount of time. And
Hmm.
you don't know if the food is going to be on time or not. You don't know what the
Right.
wait staff or the kitchen staff is like. And there have been some incidents where, he assumed the food was going to be out in 20 minutes. It wasn't. It took an hour. And then, he's now in this like, state of having, too much insulin because he misdosed. And it's quite scary. He can't drive at that point. I've had to drive him home sometimes. But those are the outlying, situations. Most of the time it is under control. But again, um, it's something he has to think about all the time. And he knows I'm working, in the nutrition field. And um, I've invited my parents over for dinner, and I remember serving them some crab cakes that they had absolutely no gluten in them at all. Like there
Yeah.
wasn't, because the starchy foods are, just turn to sugar, so that can
Right.
throw things off. So
Mhm.
I thought out the meal very carefully. I made homemade crab cakes, a side salad, homemade dressing. I even made a dessert with like oats and very dark chocolate and a little bit of peanut butter. It was all delicious. We were all really full, really satisfied. And he went home and he said, after that meal, I didn't need to take insulin.
Amazing.
Yes, yes. He was like, there were
Wow.
no spikes at all because there was literally no sugar. I mean, the dark chocolate doesn't have a lot of sugar. I use
Right.
complex carbohydrates with
Yeah.
the oats and the dessert. He just had one. It was like a little no bake cookie. And having lots of vegetables. Again, no starches. A nice lean protein with the crab, and vegetable side dishes. And it was a very clean meal for him. And he's like, if I eat like this all the time, I don't need to take my insulin. So, I mean, it made me feel really good. And it just goes to show you how powerful diet can be, right?
Yeah.
When you have a condition like diabetes, it doesn't, just because you're taking insulin doesn't mean you can eat, pizza and lasagna and pasta and, sugar cookies and all of this stuff. And then, oh, it's okay because I'm taking my insulin. It doesn't really work that way. You have to modify the foods that you eat, and it doesn't mean you have to eat cardboard. You can have wonderful, beautiful meals, eat a rainbow of vegetables and fruits and beans, like all sorts of things. You can incorporate all of these wonderful foods. You don't have to restrict yourself. You just really need to think about, obviously, the sugar levels and the starchy foods. But that comment made me feel so happy.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just got like a new breakfast idea out of you. And
Oh, okay. What, the
so
oats?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love
oats and
overnight oats.
yeah, the
Yeah.
oats and the dark chocolate
Dark
especially.
chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could just, just to have the flavor of it, because a lot of times we sit down, we want to have something sweet. And you don't have to have an entire candy bar, right? You can
Right.
have something like oats, or one of my favorite things. I take bananas, I peel them, I freeze them, like ones
Mhm.
that are kind of like, you're about to make banana bread, you don't really, like they're kind of getting
Right.
brown and whatever, right? I freeze the banana, and then I throw it in the blender with a few dark chocolate chips. I whip it all up, and it's like banana ice cream. You have that flavor of the chocolate. You have just, a handful of them in there. Maybe it's a tablespoon of chocolate. You have to be okay with bananas, I suppose.
Yeah.
But what a great alternative to having, a 350 calorie cup of ice cream, right?
Ah,
Right. And you could do the same with like overnight oats, or even, regular hot oats in the morning. You could shave a little bit of chocolate in there, or put a little like PB2 powder. There's really no sugar in there, but you get that peanutty taste if that's what you like. There's so many creative things that people can do with their cooking that I think they just don't realize. And what I work with my clients on, foremost, no matter what they come to me for, is really deep processing their diet,
mhm.
because there's all these processed foods that we've been eating that, they look like food, they're sold like food, they're marketed to us as if they're food, but they're really not foods. They're all these chemical ingredients. And again, back to the hormone thing, something as simple or innocent, which in quotes, like glucose, or dextrose, it's not as innocent as we think, and they actually
Yeah.
play on, our leptin levels. And
Mhm.
so something like fructose, right? It's not really a simple sugar, right? Every sugar molecules are made of fructose and glucose. But when you go into a chemical lab and you separate them out and you just have glucose, it's much more powerful than just a regular sugar molecule.
Right.
And that glucose will actually interfere with your leptin resistance. And so that's that hormone that says, no, you're not full, and it tells you that leptin says to your brain that you are full. But if you're eating something that inhibits that hormone and your
Mhm.
brain says, no, you're not full, you keep eating. And
Right.
so it's not necessarily those foods that make us fat, it's that we overeat because they mess up with our hormones.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you mentioned let's see. I forget what you mentioned actually. But you mentioned to me personally that you've worked with
Oh,
clients
oh,
on.
I'm sorry. They just cut out. I just came back in again. Sorry
Oh,
about
that's
that.
okay. Yeah, we could hear you just fine. So
So I'm not sure where you left off. But I was talking
yeah,
about glucose.
yeah. So yeah, you were talking about glucose and you've worked with clients on reducing food cravings and an addiction to sugar, losing weight, uncovering the secrets of the food industry that make us overeat. Could you elaborate on the last part a little bit about the secrets of the food industry?
Yeah. So I missed a little bit of what you said. The connection we had was bad. So can you just repeat the beginning part of that?
Oh yeah, sure. So you worked with clients on reducing food cravings and addiction to sugar and losing weight and uncovering the secrets in the food industry that make us overeat. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on the secrets of the food industry. Oh, you just froze.
Sure. Yeah. So there are a lot of ingredients, chemical ingredients that are in processed foods that interfere with our leptin resistance. And so,
Hmm.
again, that's the hormone that tells your brain that you're full. And so, if there is some interference there and your brain isn't getting that signal that you're full, then you're going to keep eating. Right. And so,
Right.
you eat more. So maybe you have 25% more, 50% more of whatever food. And those ingredients are in the processed foods. So, what I work with my clients on is really deprocessing their diet. If it's got a barcode on it, you probably shouldn't be eating it, or you want to think twice about it. Of course, now apples have barcodes, but that's not really what I'm meaning. I
Yeah.
mean, that stuff that's in the center of those supermarket aisles, the bright color packaging, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I always suggest to my clients, shop the perimeter of the
Absolutely.
supermarket, because that's where all the fresh fruits and vegetables are. That's where the raw meats are. The eggs, the dairy, it's all around the edge of the supermarket because it takes a long time to walk there. So you got to walk through the pretzels and the peanuts and the, taco shells and whatever. And so other than like maybe the bean aisle, like that's a pretty good aisle, and the spice aisle, that's usually in the middle as well, but generally speaking, shop the perimeter, because a lot of these ingredients, the chemical ingredients that are in foods, are really not doing us any service. They're there to prolong the shelf life of the foods that the manufacturers are selling us. So if something can sit on a shelf for 4 months instead of 2 weeks, they're going to be
Mhm.
making a lot of money out of that, right? So
Yeah.
they pump in all these chemicals so that they can make more money, right? There's only so long an apple is going to last on the shelf, right? But an apple Danish in a plastic wrap is going to last a very long time. I mean, it could be like a year or two,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, and what's keeping it alive in that plastic for a year? That's a lot of preservatives, a lot of chemical ingredients, and there's also a little dirty secret in the food industry with artificial and natural flavors. You
Hmm.
see that almost everywhere. Now, artificial flavors, people can understand what that means. There's obviously something fake about it. But
Yeah.
natural flavors are really almost no different. They did derive from an actual natural thing. So, yes, there was an orange at some point when it has orange flavoring, but the food industry companies are allowed to add up to 100 chemicals and still allowed to be called natural flavors.
Yeah.
And so those chemical ingredients, they make that orange flavor something that isn't what you would actually find in an orange. It's so delicious. It's
Hmm.
so flavorful. It's like, wow, you've just your mouth has just been exploding with this unbelievable orange flavor. So it makes you want more of it. Yet again, here we are overeating because it tastes so delectable. So these chemical ingredients alter the flavors of the food. That's what the natural flavors are there for. I mean, it's literally in everything, in tea, in every kind of cookie, candy, salad dressing, sauces, pasta sauces. take a look at the ingredients of what you're eating, and you'll see natural and artificial, more natural flavors, almost everywhere. So it's really important to read those labels because, as somebody with diabetes, this, like you have to be really careful with what you eat and keeping your weight, under control, right? That's one aspect, right? There's
Exactly.
obviously lifestyle factors as well that we mentioned at the beginning. Keeping your stress levels low, being physically active, um, and keeping all the other things in balance as well.
Exactly. Yeah, so you provided really great insight and I'm just curious because I
Yeah.
recently just switched over to tea instead of coffee. So
Hmm.
do you think I made the right choice? I know it's broad.
Well, it's totally a personal, I don't know why did you switch over from coffee to tea?
Well, I switched over because I didn't like the way that coffee was making me feel, and I didn't like the huge addiction that
Mm.
coffee gave me as a result. Like I'd be up at say like 4 a.m. making coffee, and then I'd still be drinking it at like 7 p.m., which is not good for you
Oh.
at all. So
Mm.
that goes to show that us coaches are not perfect. We have our vices.
Right. Nobody said to be a coach you have to be perfect. Like that's not in the job description, right?
Exactly. And
Right.
yeah, so I switched over to tea and
Mhm.
I recently and you probably have seen me drinking this Tazo tea.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, and I usually add it with a little almond milk and just like one packet of Splenda because like
Hmm.
you don't want to have too much sucrose, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I actually gave up caffeine about 2 years ago, and it was the
Oh,
second time. I did it about 10 years ago and then somehow crept back in again. But I was having trouble sleeping. And so,
wow.
like you, I was like, this is a problem. Not everybody is affected by caffeine in the same way. So it's completely an individual choice. I wouldn't say like everybody should give up caffeine, but if it's causing a problem, then it's something to look at. So for me, it was really affecting my sleep. And this was all along the time, probably around the same time of the divorce. And I was like, well, I want to improve my sleep. Let me just try. And for about 10 days, I had really bad headaches. And that was the caffeine withdrawal. So
Mhm.
I don't know if if you're now, Tazo, I think is mostly decaffeinated, but did you give up coffee or did you give up caffeine? Because you could obviously still have caffeine in tea. Even green tea has a little bit of caffeine. Um, but yeah, so I gave up caffeine. My sleep definitely improved, and now I have herbal teas all the time. I'm actually drinking one right now as well. Um, and it's great. Again, though, I do find that a lot of the teas do have natural flavors, so that's
Yeah,
something I would just remind you to look at. And I also got used to. I switched to honey. I mean, for me, I'm not diabetic, so I don't have to be so careful with the sugar, although I do have a very
yeah,
low sugar diet naturally anyway.
right.
But I found that I would put in like a little spoon of, just sort of dip the spoon in the honey, let it drip off, and then that would be the honey that I would use in the tea, just a little bit. And then I just got used to not having it. I slowly reduced it. And because again, do I really need that sweetness and all that sugar? Ask yourself, do you really need the Splenda in there? Maybe if you wanted to, just try reducing it down. Use 3/4 of a packet for a week, then use half a packet for a week and see what you can get down. Because some of these flavors of teas, they're so um, you know, full of flavor, and they're really lovely tasting. Even sometimes hot water with like a squeeze of lemon is really nice too. So getting back to sort of more natural eating, just enjoying the actual taste of lemon, or in whatever it is, lime, or if you're drinking water, a lot of people don't like drinking just plain water. Throw some watermelon slices in there, or cucumber, or an orange peel. Or in the summer, I love to. I grow mint outside, and I cut off a sprig or two of mint. I put it in a glass bottle, keep it in my fridge, and then I have minty water like all day, and it's great.
That's awesome.
Um, you know,
I never thought of that.
yeah. Hmm?
Yeah, I never
You've
thought
never
of the
thought of
whole
that?
mint thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's delicious. Yeah, you sort of wiggle the stem a little bit so it kind of releases the mint oil, and then put it in the water, fill it up, and put it store it in a glass jar.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's delicious. It's
Yeah, that's
great.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
so I just want to thank you so much and honor your time for being here. And
yeah.
so where can my followers and people watching on YouTube find you?
Yeah, I have a website called truewellnesswithin.com, and I have a lot of information there. If they want to send me an email, I'm Suzy, Suzy, at truewellnesswithin.com. And we talked a tiny bit about like divorced people, if they do have particular needs. I actually have a quiz on my website that is called Have You Healed from the Stress of Your Divorce? And they can go to my website, again, truewellnesswithin.com/divorced, and they can take the quiz and see how they score. And if they still want to work on some stress reduction and nutrition ideas, I would be more than happy to talk with them. I offer a free consultation. And yeah, so I would love to hear from your listeners. And it's been wonderful chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.